Good morning, everyone. Hey, it is so good to see everyone this morning. If you're a guest this morning, man, we're so glad that you're here to worship with us. As a church, it's our vision to connect people to Jesus and love our community. To kind of catch us all up, a couple weeks ago, we started this series together called Some Assembly. Now we're awake. Some Assembly Required. Talking about relationships and even specifically the marriage relationship. And over the course of this series, what we've talked about from the very beginning is that we're going to build this together. And so week one, we had a box over here with a picture on the outside of this bed. And then last week, we opened the box. And now this week, as it's obvious, we've started building this queen-size bed that we're going to give away. But as we build through this series, what we've talked about so far is that sometimes the expectation of marriage is like the picture on the outside of the box, and it looks great. And everything, it's going to be just like that, and then we get into it and we find out it's not, and it's hard, and it takes a lot of work. And some of us are carrying some deep wounds from some places where relationships didn't work, and there was lots of conflict and hurt. Last week, I invited Emily, my wife, up on stage, and we had a conversation together about the instructions that God gives us. The instructions for a husband, the instructions for a wife, and to live out these instructions, it's hard, it's difficult, because it goes against some of our kind of natural grain. It goes against some of our natural makeup, and we hear words like lead and submit, and sometimes it just doesn't land well. Here's what I need you to do as we start today. Okay? If you're here with your spouse, or if you're here with anybody around you, okay, but specifically if you're with your spouse, I need you to look at them right now. Okay, this isn't one of those awkward stare things a couple weeks ago. Okay, I need you to look at them, and we're gonna right from the get-go get this out of the way. Look at them and say, "You need to hear this today." Okay, so now we've both said it to one another. We have a mutual understanding that everybody needs to hear this. Okay, so when we leave, it's not like, did you hear him today? Okay, we're going to put that to rest right now. Okay, or did you hear him today? I don't want to choose a side, okay? Everybody in the room, it needs to hear what this guy Paul is about to say this morning. Because what he is about to give us, what he is about to drop on us, is the two key ingredients of healthy relationships. I want to pray, and we're going to jump in. Father in heaven, I'm so grateful this morning to be in this room, to be in this community. Father, a group of people trying our best to follow you, and some of us, we have no idea what that means, and some of us, we've been trying to do it for years, and a lot of us are someplace in between there. But God, no matter why we walk through these doors, I pray this morning that you will meet us here. God, I pray if we came in with tons of joy or full of sorrow, I pray that you will meet us here. Father, if we walked in the door completely full of stress and worry, or we walked in the door completely full of freedom, I pray that you will meet us here. Father, the topic of relationships, it's every day, and you know this. The topic of marriage for so many of us is every day. God, and it appears as though Satan just continues to attack these very things. And so we pray that you will build in us strength and courage to love and to lead the way that you've called us to. God, I pray this morning that we recognize that every one of us in the room is sinful, we've made mistakes, and we're in desperate need of you. And Jesus, because of your gift on the cross, we meet here as people with the hope of heaven. We love you, and it's in your name we pray. Amen. I brought this up on stage to use for the illustration of the story I'm about to tell. However, from the time of getting this from our kitchen here at the church to walking up on stage, it became its own illustration. Because in between that time, here are the two phrases that I heard from different people. One, you're talking about marriage, you got to be stirring something up. Two, she normally hits the other end. All right? So if there's ever a need for us to have a conversation about this topic, hey, it's today. If I were to ask you, what are the main ingredients to bake a cake outside of, okay, the box and water, okay? Okay, outside of that, outside of the box and water, what are some needed ingredients, okay, to bake a cake? Shout them out. Okay, eggs and oil. Flour. Sugar. We're a little less confident. Okay, we're real confident about those. We're good. Okay, icing. Yeah, those are my people. Icing. Absolutely. The best part of a cake. Okay? Yeah, you see, there are necessary ingredients that are needed to bake a cake, right? Like you can't just walk in and be like, I'm going to put spaghetti sauce in it today. Like that'd be gross and it wouldn't work, okay? And you would eat it and immediately you would be conflicted, right? And because it doesn't belong there, okay? There's some of us that we're making cake with the box and water, and I'm not here to judge you, okay? That's how I'm making a cake, okay? There are others of us that are finding all of the ingredients and placing them and mixing them and following the steps, the process, putting all of the ingredients where they need to be. Part of the struggle is that we as a society, we are living in a society that has box and water relationships. We're trying to look for the simple way to do things with the least amount of work to try to get the end result. The problem is they fall apart really quick. And you go to mix it up and it's not quite so easy. We have a lot of people that are really excited about a wedding but aren't excited about the work of marriage. And so we find ourselves looking for ingredients to help it work. We find ourselves wondering, why does it not taste as good as grandma's? Because we're missing ingredients. We're missing valuable ingredients. And as Paul, this guy who is writing this letter called Ephesians to this church in Ephesus, it was an early church, as he is writing to them, he is reminding them as followers of Jesus, this is what it looks like to follow Jesus in life, in your home, in your marriage, with your kids, with the people around you. This is what it looks like to live as a follower of Jesus in culture, in community. He's reminding them about their identity. And within their identity, part of that is following Jesus in their home, specifically in the marriage relationship. And over the past couple weeks, we have been breaking down Paul's words about what it looks like to be married and a follower of Jesus. And today, Paul's going to bring all of those words together at the end of Ephesians 5. If you have a Bible and want to turn there, I'd invite you to. It'll be on the screen. You're also welcome to look it up on your phone. Ephesians chapter 5. We're going to read one verse together today. And this is where Paul brings all of his instructions together. From the design of marriage in Genesis 2 to the roles that are played. In Ephesians chapter 5, verse 33, it says this, however, each one of you must also love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. Two main ingredients. Love and respect. And what's interesting about this verse is that Paul doesn't give them as suggestions. Did you catch that? They're not, hey, if you have time, or it might help you out. It's not a self-help or a quick fix. It's each one of you must. Wife must. You see, this word must, it takes it from suggestion to command. And so it's not just a helpful solution. It's the key ingredients in order to make it work. It's the language in which God is speaking. You see, Paul is writing to a culture where women are devalued and men are possessive and arrogant. And so for them to read these verses, for them to read these words in this one verse, that husbands must love their wives. Well, I mean, wives during this time period, they weren't seen as much more than property. And so to love in the way that is communicated, and then wives are supposed to respect. Wait a minute here. How are we supposed to respect when we're so devalued? How are we supposed to respect How are we supposed to respect when we're not respected? Right? I mean, these two words, they are what set every relationship apart. These two words, they don't blend in with culture, which is why when they heard it and when we heard it, the tension is the same. Because as soon as you hear, you must do this and you must do this, we enter the question of what if they aren't respectable? Or what if they aren't lovable? All of us in the room, and we're not going to go around the room with story time, but all of us in the room, we have had plenty of moments where we're not lovable, right? And we've got plenty of moments when we weren't too respectable. You see, so when Paul gives this command, it's not conditional. It's not conditional. This is what breathes life. This is what breathes life into your relationship. Love and respect are often the beginning and end of leadership and submission. This command here for love, the word in the original Greek language is the word agape. There are three words used throughout the New Testament to describe love at different levels. One is a friendship love, a brotherly love. One is this rich truth that he is speaking of here between husbands and wife. And one is a sexual love. This word here, agape, it is the truest and richest form of love. It is a sacrificial love. It's an unconditional love. It's a love that doesn't give up. And maybe most importantly, it is a love that invests. It's a love that invests. And so, when Paul writes and he says, love your wives like you love yourself. Well, guys, we're good at investing in things that we really like, right? Like we're good at investing time and energy to develop a craft or a trade of some kind, a hobby. We're good at doing that. There's an investment that we make. Emily, she bought me a smoker about 1.5 years ago for Father's Day, and she thought that was the end of the investment. Not so much. That was just the beginning. Now it's here. Now I need to go and get everything that goes with it and everything to make it work, let alone the meat that I have to put on it. It was just the beginning. You see, it's a love that invests. And so this call to love, it's not a conditional love. Husbands, when we are commanded to love our wives, it is with an investment love. In other words, we willingly make deposits. If we think of it as a bank account, when you open a bank account, you have to have like a minimal amount of money to open that account, right? You have to go in with $20 or $50 or whatever it is, and that starts the account. Okay, if that were to represent our wedding day, okay, most of us, all of us, we're not living our entire life on that opening 20 or 50, right? No. We add more to it, and because there are times when we're going to have to withdraw from it, right? The same is true with our relationship with our wives. We're not just going to live on the I do and yes that was said on our wedding day. That's not the extent of love for the rest of our relationship. We're called to love our wives with an investment love where we sacrifice, where we give, where we make deposits. What does this look like? We make deposits by listening. Guys, not listening to solve, not listening to fix, just listening. Most women, when surveyed in a recent marriage survey, it said, when your spouse is listening to you, do they respond? And they said no. I'm a fixer. When Emily starts telling me about things in her mind or things she's trying to figure out, my immediate response wants to be, well, let me bring solutions to the table. And 9 times out of 10, she doesn't need a solution. She just needs my ear. We can deposit love, invest love by listening. Listening and not solving, listening and not fixing. We can love with an agape, with an investment love by sharing our feelings. Guys, I know that this is not on the top of our list. We don't wake up each morning and be like, I can't wait to tell my wife about all my emotions today, right? Like that is not on the top of our list. It really probably doesn't even enter the list. It's not on the list. Our wife dreams of it being on the list, but we never bring it to the table. Back when we were dating, at some point, we shared feelings. At some point, you tricked her into marrying you, okay? So you shared some feeling at some point. But someplace along the way, we get to the wedding day, and it's like, okay, I'm in. Feeling shut off. Your wife wants to be a part of more than your schedule. She wants to be a part of your heart. She wants to know really the way that you're feeling. Emily always knows if she asks me, she always knows if something's wrong. She always knows if something's going well. And so if she asks me and I don't tell her, it's more or less saying, well, I'm not inviting you into this love. Instead, we invest. We share what's actually going on. How is it that we show unconditional love? How is it that we show this agape love? We show it by touching. And I'm not talking about touching, looking for something later in the day. I'm talking about just holding her hand, putting your arm around her, letting her know that you're present, letting her know that you're there, letting her know that you're available, letting her know that she matters. What does love look like? It looks like reprioritizing. Reprioritizing our wants and our desires, because when we get married, it is now we, which means that we sacrifice and we give up. We reprioritize to move the relationship ahead. What does it look like to love? It means walking through Target and not judging every purchase and thinking to yourself with a look on your face, do we really need that? Maybe that's just me, sorry. You see, love your wife. Agape love is an investment love where we bring and we make deposits not looking for a return, but to build into our wife and to remind her that she matters. These words, they go hand in hand, and it's not you do this and you do this, it's we do this together. And so, ladies, love his interests, his talents, and his abilities. Try the things that he likes while he tries the things that you like. Compliment who he is, not just who you'd like him to be. You see, we are called to love each other with an investing, sacrificial, unconditional way. The thing is, again, like we said last week, men and women are different, and while women desperately need this love, guys, a lot of us, we can go a long way on a little bit. However, for us, deep in our DNA, deep inside of us, God created us with this strand of DNA that when it's struck, it drives our heart crazy. We would never say that, of course. It's the word respect. We desire to be respected, which, should challenge us within ourselves that we should be respectable, especially in our homes with the people that see our worst. We should be respectable. So where does respect come from? Respect. What is respect? We're going to abort mission. What does respect look like? Where does it come from? Wise respect comes from listening and not trying to change him. Listening to how his day was, listening to the difficulties at work. Respect looks like following his lead. Even when maybe we think we can do it better. Maybe sometimes if we think we had a more efficient plan. Respect is knowing some days are hard.
Some days are difficult, and so there are some days, not all days, guys, don't take this too far, but sometimes respect looks like quiet when we get home. You see, these words, love and respect, they work together. And when we don't get these in our relationships, and not even just marriage relationships, friendships, coworkers, when respect is distant, when love is distant, even just a brotherhood type of love, we begin to crave it. And so we speak about it. We just don't speak the right way about it. I want us to travel for just a minute down this hypothetical road. Hypothetical road where it is in the evening, it's after work, you've not had dinner. A hypothetical conversation begins between a husband and a wife. The wife begins this hypothetical conversation saying, "Where would you like to go to eat?" This is all hypothetical. Okay? The husband responds with, "It doesn't matter to me. Wherever you'd like to go." Put our elbows away. This is to all of us. We all need to hear this. To which the wife hypothetically responds, "It doesn't matter to me either. Why don't you just pick?" Then the conversation continues, and the husband says, it really doesn't matter. I'm happy anywhere with you." She knows that's not the case and just wants him to pick some place to eat. And so this conversation goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until one of two solutions. Either somebody just decides out of anger where they're going to eat, or you guys get it, the hypothetical couple gets into an argument to the point that there's so much argument you never even go to dinner. Or then there's a few of us that someone is decisive and says where we're going to eat. All hypothetical. You see, a lot of times within that communication, speaking of the desire for love and respect, and it's actually being given, it's just not communicated in the way that we understand it. A lot of times, when ladies ask that question, where would you like to eat, they are looking for their husband's leadership, and they are just wanting him to make a choice to make it easy, because she's tired from a long day with kids or at work. But it's not seen that way. A lot of times, the husband's response of, "It doesn't matter to me, pick wherever you would like," is actually a desire to love his wife, meaning, I really want it to be your choice. I really want you to pick where you want to eat. But a lot of times it's not communicated that way. And so because of this miscommunication, what is actually there and needed is missed. Because there's not an investment. It's just trying to figure something out. You see, we can make cakes with boxes and water and just try to figure it out. Or we can make investments and bring the ingredients needed in order to make the relationship soar. You see, the ingredients are what make our heart sing. They are what God communicates with us through. And so this idea of love and respect, friends, our truth for this morning is this: love and respect are the language of heaven. Love and respect are the language of heaven. They are the language of a healthy marriage, but not just marriage, relationship. Love and respect, they are the language of heaven, and they teach us and they show us who we are to be and how we can respond to others. They are the language in which God communicates his design for the household. And so for some of us, the question comes with our spouse. For some of us, the question comes with our friends. For some of us, the question comes with our coworkers. And maybe for all of us, the question comes with everybody in the church. If love and respect are the communication or the language of heaven, how are we speaking? How are we speaking? Are we speaking in such a way that points towards heaven? With the way that we treat one another, with the way that we love and respect our spouse, or the way that we respect our coworker, are we pointing people to Jesus? if they're the language of heaven, then is Jesus seen through the way that we treat one another? Paul's commands of love and respect, they're not suggestions just to make our day go better. They're the language in which God speaks to us. I have a question. It's pretty deep. What do sushi and hockey have to do with each other? Don't worry, this is not a preacher joke. Most of us would say they have absolutely nothing to do with one another, and you'd be just about correct. But what do hockey and sushi have to do with one another? It's through hockey and sushi that they could most clearly define Emily and I. Okay? She is an adventurous eater. Okay, she loves to try new things and try different things. When we went to Japan a couple years ago, we went to this place called Sushi Go Round, and it's literally this conveyor belt of all different kinds of food and sushi, and you may or may not know what it is, and you just grab a plate and try it. And so she sat at one table with my brother-in-law, and they tried all kinds of everything that came around, and they loved it. And my sister and I, we sat on the other table, and the only plate that we pulled off was the one that said cooked beef. All right? Like, I'm not an adventurous eater, and I do not enjoy sushi. There was one night we were down in Colombia on a date, and we went to the Japanese steakhouse for something different, and we sat down, and she said to me, would you like to order some sushi? Now, she already knew the answer to that question. Absolutely not. But she asked me that question, and I said, sure. What do you want to get? And she kind of turned and looked at me. And I said, I don't know a lot about the whole sushi game, so why don't you tell me about what this looks like? And so she explained, well, there's this, and there's this, and there's this, and so I listened. I said, well, why don't we get this one? She said, are you sure? And I said, yeah, sure. And so we ordered it, and they brought it out, and I picked a piece up, and I ate it. And she looked at me, and she said, did you like it? And I said, no. No. And then she said to me, well, at least you tried it. It was fun, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Sure was. And it was. And I learned more about sushi than I ever had taken the time to learn before. And I knew she loved it, and I didn't, and we normally just left it at that. But all of a sudden, there was this curveball where I took time to listen, where I made an investment. A couple years ago, we were up in Buffalo for Christmas. My brother-in-law and sister were there, and we decided that the four of us, we were going to go to a Buffalo Sabres hockey game. That's a professional team up there. And so we bought tickets. My sister was really excited. I was excited. My brother-in-law was excited. I know that Emily does not enjoy sports. Like, I mean, that's not a secret in our house. She doesn't pretend. Hey, we don't do the sports thing. I do the sports thing. And I said, hey, do you want to go to a hockey game? She said, yeah. I said, okay. And so we got there, and we sat down in our seats, and they were pretty good seats. And so there's the face-off, the game starts, everything. And she's sitting there, and all of a sudden she starts asking me questions about what's going on. She said, how come they can do this and they can't do this? And so then I explained it to her. And then they started to get in a fight at the other end, and she looked at me, she goes, they can fight? And I said, yeah, why do you think I love it so much? And then the rest of the game continued, and she kept asking questions. And she looked at me, she said, well, why can you do this? And why can you do this? And these are her words. Why do they have to go over in the boxy thing? That's the penalty box. And I knew that she's not a sports person. But she knew that I loved hockey and still do. And so it was an investment. You see, friends, sometimes it doesn't have to be this enormous, elaborate scheme that we come up with to love the people around us. A lot of times it can just be investing in the things that they already care about. standing with them in the process, making deposits in the places in life where we stand together. These words, love and respect, they mean so much because it's what Jesus modeled for us. They're the language of heaven because it's what God showed us in his Son, that he loved you and me so much to send his Son to this world to die for us, to go to a cross for us. As Jesus was hanging on the cross, he could have looked at you and me and he could have seen our worst moments. He could have looked at you and me and he could have seen our deepest secrets. He could have looked at you and me and seen the very worst of us. But he didn't. He saw us as children. He saw us as cherished. And he respected who God made us to be even when we had messed it up. He had respected the call of his Father to come and die for you and me. You see, love and respect, they're not something that Paul just dreams up. Love and respect are following the example of Jesus. And as we love Jesus, we live in Jesus. And Jesus lived with love and respect. Because love and respect are the language of heaven. This morning, how are we speaking? Are we loving our wives? Are we respecting our husbands? Are we loving our friends? Are we respecting our coworkers? Are we loving the people that make up the church? Are we investing in the places where God has called us to invest? To speak the way that he has called us to speak. If love and respect are the language of heaven this morning, how are you and I speaking? Let's go ahead and stand together. We're going to worship together. For those of us in the room that are married, for those of us that are married in the room, how are we speaking? Are we speaking love? Are we speaking respect with our actions, with our words, with our tone? And maybe this morning as we worship, where we recognize the way that Jesus has changed us, maybe it's right where we sit, it's this cry, God, help me. Help me to love. Help me to respect my spouse the way that you've called me to. For some of us, we carry deep wounds and hurts from previous marriages, broken relationships, where someone else maybe didn't hold up their end of the deal. And maybe this morning, more than the way that you need to, maybe more than you need to understand how people around you are acting, maybe this morning more than anything else, you need to hear the way that Jesus sees you. He doesn't see you as your mistake. He doesn't see you as your past relationship. He doesn't see you as your broken marriage. He sees you as a child. And he loves you. He doesn't see you as all the mistakes that maybe led up to that. You are loved. You are cherished. And you matter. For all of us, as the church, called to live in community with one another, it's so different and so distinct, opposite of everything else in this world. How are we speaking to one another if love and respect is the language of heaven? This morning as we worship, maybe for all of us, the most important question we need to ask, if love and respect are the language of heaven, how are we speaking to him? Do we love him with who we are? And maybe for some of us that means we need to surrender our lives to Jesus today. Do we respect his authority in our life, that it changes who we are, not just this time on Sunday morning? This morning as we worship, as we celebrate what Jesus has done for us, as together we sing and celebrate the way that God has loved us. If love and respect are the language of heaven, this morning, how are we speaking?